Jordan observed. What is that?
So now let's talk about what's actually in the madVR Experience Center. I was doing the interview here in the chair, so naturally let's talk about what's behind me. This is the Ascendo 64-inch infrasonic subwoofer powered by an AIA2 10K2 amplifier, so 10,000 watts, dual voice coil, and man, is it a monster. And we talked about previously that the original one, the original cabinet, did not fit down the stairs, so that lent itself to the journey of this room. But we did make it in, and thanks to Doug Chiapello for building this cabinet and giving us 80 hours of his time to make this happen. He would go to work and then come over here and work some more to build this thing, and he built the entire thing, made all the cuts with a track saw in the garage. So when you buy a 64-inch subwoofer or even the 100-inch subwoofer from Ascendo, you get the woofer. You don't get the cabinet. And the reason they do that is because the cabinets are so large, like what we found out trying to move this thing down the stairs, they don't fit in a lot of cases, and or they have to be custom made for wherever they're going to go. So this one did come with a cabinet because it was bought secondhand. It was a new driver, but the cabinet was secondhand. And unfortunately, I didn't get to use that cabinet because it didn't fit down the stairs. But Doug Chiapello made all of these cuts in the garage, 20 sheets of Baltic birch, 3/4 inch, and we had 1 sheet of waste. So he spent about 80 hours building this monstrosity. It is 48 inches deep, 68 inches wide, and 72 inches tall, weighs over 2,000 pounds and powered by 10,000 watts. It will blow people's hats off if they're sitting right there, which is kind of unheard of for a home theater subwoofer in a space like this. You see that a lot in car audio, but it is a monster, and it has a tremendous amount of output, and people may look at it and go, well, it's huge, it's going to be really slow. But the actual fact is it's quite the opposite. So the large driver, it's super stiff. It doesn't have to move hardly at all to be able to put out a huge amount of SPL. So the less excursion this thing's going to have, the less distortion it's going to have. So it's one of the best subwoofers, in my opinion, ever made. I think the best subwoofer I'll give to the 33, which we can talk about here in a little bit. But in and of itself, is this thing a necessity for this space? Absolutely not. But man, is it fun to use, and is it fun to look behind you and see this thing moving with 100 millimeters of excursion? It is, for lack of a better term, we said it already, she's a monster. So that's the sub. Let's move up and talk about the projector. The projector is made by Christie. It is a 4K 35 Griffin. It'll do 35,000 lumens, 5,001 native contrast. I'm really excited for when VDR Vader comes out. You can see a little measurement mic sticking here, so we can actually see what's going on in the room in real time through RTA and Spectro when we're looking at smart. But this projector, I said earlier, I didn't really measure, and I got really lucky that she fit. It's sitting on decoupling. They're like rubber half spheres, and it sits on those to decouple from the sub. And Jordan, you saw it yesterday. You don't really notice the projector moving hardly at all. And it is literally sitting on top of this cabinet. Now back to the cabinet for a second. This cabinet, with the subwoofer in it, the driver in it, weighs over 2,000 pounds. That did not stop it from walking. So the driver, when we were using it, when we were doing testing, it was moving. Like it was slowly starting to move forward. So it's actually anchored using concrete anchors, 9 of them, into the floor here. So it can't go anywhere. So she's concrete anchored in the floor. The projector, the 4K 35, sits on top of it on little isolation pucks. And it has its own dedicated 30 amp circuit that it runs on. It's got HVAC, it's in its own hush box, and it back feeds out and dumps out to a different part of the house. So this room stays remarkably cool for how much power comes in here. We're over 100,000 watts of power that comes in here, and we stay remarkably cool. But this projector, in my eyes, the reason I went with it is it, in a lot of capacities, represents, and there's other manufacturers that do this, but it, in my eyes, represents really the end until you get to a certain level. The Eclipse obviously is above this one, but unfortunately the Eclipse would not fit in this room, so this was the consolidation, oh dear, that we had to go with. And I'd probably be a single man if I did the Eclipse. That wouldn't have gone well. So this was the direction we went, and I don't regret it at all. One of the nice things about going to projectors like this is the detachable lenses. Really no other projector, there's a couple manufacturers that may be able to do it, but your typical residential projectors wouldn't be able to work with the throw in this room. We're at I think it's a 1.2 throw, and the screen is 165 inches. So your head in this theater sits about 9.5 feet from 165 inches, and this projector sits roughly 14 feet from the screen. So most residential projectors are not going to be able to make this work, but this lens does make it work. And when you put this thing with the madVR, so for anybody that doesn't know about a madVR video processor, the madVR Extreme, it is able to create an image that is able to keep up with the audio that we're delivering in this room. So we talked about earlier that the audio or the experience, the idea, the goal in this room is to leave nothing on the table. And when you start putting all these things together, like a madVR with a Christie, the better display you give a madVR, the better the overall experience becomes. So you're conjoining a bunch of things that are great on their own and making something better when you put them together. So you're using a bunch of different tools to try and overcome something. And it would have been great using a Christie by itself, but when you take it and use it with something else, it just makes the overall experience better. Like if you use this subwoofer with Storm Audio, right? You're able to do a bunch of stuff through PEQ and do things through alignment, through timing that a lot of people unfortunately don't do. They're like, I'm just going to get a flat frequency response, and they don't dive into the time domain. When you're able to leverage tools like that together, it just makes everything really come together and become exponentially better. So sorry, sounded a little salesy now thinking about that, but that's not what my intent was. My point was just using one thing is great, but when you can use multiple things together, just like with multiple people working together, we talked about the journeys of blood, sweat, and tears of everybody in this room, multiple people working together, it just makes the overall experience that much better and that much more worthwhile. So one of my favorite parts about this room is the room itself. People really don't give the room as much credit as it deserves. To me, a room is at least 50% of your overall experience. And what we've done in this room has allowed us to really control what is going on, both video and audio. But not only can we control it, we can also change it. So if in the future I decide that I need to change something, speakers, video, HDMI cabling, HVAC, every single one of these panels can come down. I'll show you in just a second. But the room itself is done by Officina Acustica, designed and built in Italy by Maurizio and Peter, and they designed, put together this room. I was able to see a render of it. They took my inspirations, took the speakers, took the specs, took the dimensions of the room, and this is what we came up with. I wanted something that was aesthetically pleasing, but not distracting. Almost a black hole, but you'd walk in and go, oh, this is nice to look at. It's not just a huge velvet room. But at the same time, I wanted something that was usable and changeable. So this room, the OA Officina Acustica rooms, represent what I view as the pinnacle of acoustic treatments. There may be better, but this gives you the benefit of being able to be usable while changeable. So every single one of these panels, so from the tops to the sides, every single one of these is different levels of diffusion and absorption. And if you come up and touch them, there you can feel that every panel is different. And on top of that, every panel sits X distance off the wall, between 12 and 16 inches. So this room is a room within a room. You're going from timber framing with R13 in between it, to Risset clips, to 7/8 inch hat channel, to 3/4 inch OSB, green glue, another layer of 3/4 inch OSB, and then that's all painted with matte black paint on primer. And then you have an aluminum extruded aluminum substrate that sits behind this, and then all of these panels mount to it. So every single one of these panels comes off. Dumb as it sounds and simple as it sounds, it's all using 3M high grade. It's not, Velcro is the wrong word, but I'm going to say Velcro because you guys all get what I'm talking about. Velcro is like Jacuzzi. Jacuzzi's the brand. Velcro is the brand. So it's not Velcro, but you guys get it. So every single one of these comes off and provides easy access to what's behind it. All the speakers sit behind it. So you've got a what is this room? An 11-1-6 is what we've got in this room. There's 11 subwoofers. So if you look at it that way, it's 11-11-6. But let's take one of these off. We're going to look behind the 64 here. And back here is what we call the dead men. So there's hanging 6 foot tall, 16-inch wide pieces of 3/4-inch OSB that are suspended on chains. They have Dynamat stapled to both sides, then Eco Fiber or cotton material on both sides, and then R38 stapled to both sides. So they're back there. When you get back behind the sub, it's really weird. I'll say it's almost like an anechoic chamber. It's not that quiet, obviously, but it is stupid quiet when you get back there. So they come off really simply. This one's not adhered on because it comes off a decent amount, but you can see the timber framing right there. And then we'll take this one off. You can see the speaker hidden right there. And you've got a 12-inch Pro beryllium. So it's got a beryllium tweeter. And then you've got a 21-inch kick sub. And they both look infinitesimally small in comparison to the 64. I mean, this looks like heck, an 8-inch driver in comparison to this thing. But that's a 21, that's a 12, and you can see the dead men as they hang back there that are acoustic treatments. Because ideally, you want to absorb the bass waves, and though with Storm these can do cancellations through active room treatment, they're not able to keep up with the 8 subs that are up front, the 621s and the 233s. So we need the ability to absorb before the bass wave comes back. And there are 10 of these guys back there hanging on chains so they can move instead of just being faceted to a wall. But that is, in a nutshell, the Officina room. So that's the back, and we talked about the sidewall, so all of those can come down. And then up here you have your 6 top channels coming up, and each one of these has its own level of absorption and diffusion. These don't have any speakers behind them, but these are hanging from chains. So you have the room within a room effect where sound can come through it again, bounce off the substrate material, and then come back. So you're getting double duty on the absorption and diffusion, which is super nice. Same is going to be true for the front. So behind the screen, you've got all the subs, and filling in all of the voids around the subs and the black swans is stacked R38, funnily enough, inside of bed sheets. Because as long as you can breathe through it, it's probably a pretty good acoustically transmersible material. And bed sheets, which is what we're seeing back here, these are fitted sheets, I think is what these are. But they do great at just containing the fiberglass from the R38 and the R13. So lighting in this room is just Philips Hue, nothing extravagant. I like Philips Hue because it was easy to implement, it's easy to control, it's easy for the family to use. That's another big point of this room is you could have an awesome theater, but if it's not easy to use, to me it's not great, or it's not as great as it could be. So room itself represents 50%, if not more, of the overall experience. This has been a great, great experience with Officina and everything that they've delivered. I can't recommend them enough. It's been fantastic. Peter and Maurizio have been awesome to work with, and it was really cool to be able to see the room and move around it 3-dimensionally before we were even had a room in manufacturing and well before it was delivered. So really appreciate that, and I get to thank Atlanta Home Theater again for that one, and going into an OA room and just going, oh no, I should not be here. This was a mistake. Costing more money. But in the end, I don't regret it at all. I would do it all over again because, nicely enough, if we decide that we're going to move, this room can all come down. At least the interior of it can all come down, can come with us. So very nice that you're making more of an investment. It's not really an investment, but it's not as much of a sunk cost because if something were to happen, we want to change it, expand it, move, this room can come with us and expand as we need. So again, that's the room. Really love it. Would do it all again in a heartbeat. Moving from the back of the room to the front of the room, the thing that dominates the front of this room is a 165-inch diagonal Stewart Harmony G3 screen. Funny thing about this screen that a lot of people notice is it is floor to ceiling, wall to wall. And the reason for that is I'm lazy. And I decided to go this direction because I didn't want to design or build a front wall. So this front wall is outside of the sides left and right is it's 4 2x4s, 5 2x4s because you got the bottom, and a 2x10 coming across the top. Very simple construction. And my thought process with this is very simple. It's acoustically transparent. Some Vanna White here. Acoustically transparent. And if I like it this big, I have to do nothing else. If I don't like it this big, I can simply go back to masking off part of it that I don't like using manual masking panels. So I was a network engineer. I've got an engineering background, and they say that engineers, their best creations are usually born out of laziness. And this, ladies and gentlemen, was born purely out of laziness. And it was born because I didn't want to design a front wall. So before this, we had a Seymour Screen Excellence Neo. There is nothing bad about that screen. I just rotate between them. Right now, it's the Stewart Harmony G3. Again, the material on this is a Harmony G3. It is a 0.7 gain weave. It doesn't necessarily need to be a weave because of how far back the speakers are from the screen. Weaves typically do better than perforated materials with speakers that are close to them because the waveforms don't need as long to stabilize themselves before they run into the screen itself and can potentially create distortion. So that's not why we did it. I did it because I love acoustics. I love, acoustics is the wrong word. I love audio. And the saying, or the people say that woven materials do better with audio than perforated materials. They attenuate the sound less. Because of the projector that's in here, I was able to get away with a lower gain screen, right? In a lot of situations, a 0.7 gain screen can be very difficult because you're having to put more light on it and you're reflecting back less. Ideally, you'd be at a neutral 1 gain or even positive, though those do come with their own levels of compromise, right? You may have deteriorating viewing angles, you may have some sparkle depending on the gain, you may have some coloration or uniformity problems. But with this screen, with a 0.7, uniformity is nearly perfect, and I know that the sound that's coming through is as little attenuated as possible. So behind this, you have the 3 black swans. We'll put an image up. There's like an X-ray image that I can showcase where it'll show the black swans. You've got 621s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 2 33s. And then you've got the R33 and bats sitting back there filling in all the gaps. There's 7 feet behind the screen. I needed that because the electrical room for the house is over there, and it is inaccessible unless you walk behind the screen. So you can get back there. We'll probably show a picture of this, or we can go back there. Jordan, we can go back there later if you want. Go underneath the stairs and you can actually stand back there, which is quite cool. You can be back there when things are on and manipulate things and do things. And again, it's making future me not hate past me. So it's great to be able to have access back there and making everything easier. I don't regret this at all. It actually turned out to be hugely immersive. I'm right on the fringes of what I would view as an acceptable viewing angle. It is amazing to see something on screen and it being the entire front of the theater. Wall to wall, floor to ceiling. I think there's nothing better, and I won't have it another way. If I do another theater, this is exactly how I'll do it. So no complaints, no regrets, nothing there. Screen's been awesome. No issues. I'm sure you guys can hear the whir of the fans. We're back by the racks now. First thing from the top is the Storm ISP Elite Mark III, 32 channels, all analog. Then you've got 2 PA8s followed by a single PA16 that's powering all of the speakers. The front speakers in there, the Black Swans, are active, so they're taking 2 channels apiece and then doing active crossovers in the processor. And then below that, we've got the MagTheatron, which really at this point it's effectively a Spears and Munson player. I don't really use discs. Kaleidescape handles all of the playback. So it just really does Spears and Munsell and anything else that comes along. It is great for doing any off flash drive content, so you can play virtually anything, but it doesn't do a whole lot. Below that is the madVR Extreme Mark II, which is opposite the Storm as the brains of the operation for the video side. I look at it as giving you full granular control over your video experience. We talk all the time about audio and creating audio how we want it. Why not do the same for video? And madVR really does a great job of doing that, and that's why it's here. Plus, it's the madVR Experience Center, so it'd be a little funny if it wasn't here, but it does a fantastic job. And the calibration for the Christie was done through that using a 1D and 3D LUT. Below that is a AV Pro Edge MX88. It's an 18 gigabit per second HDMI switch, 8 in, 8 out, and it is full. So all of the sources are filing into it, and then it backfeeds and sends out all of the information to the Storm and then out to the projector, so I can actually run unprocessed content if I want to bypass the madVR to the Christie directly. Below that is a AV Pro Edge 4x1 video matrix and the Kaleidescape down below, and then some random sources. You've got a Roku, an Apple TV, an NVIDIA Shield. There was an Revolution in here. I ran out of room, so it is not present. But that is the rack. And I mentioned this about the madVR, about it having full granular control over the video experience. And the Storm does a lot of that too for audio, really all of that too for the audio. You've got full PEQ that we did for calibration before we did DIRAC, and then we ran DIRAC, had DIRAC do art, active room treatment, and then from there did another PEQ after that. So there's no need for external DSPs. Everything is done in the Storm. It's got a great user interface. The GUI is awesome, and it does a fantastic job. So just like the madVR, if you guys are after the pinnacle, the best of the best, the Storm is a great place to stop for that, because really there's nothing better than it. It does a fantastic job giving you all the control you need to create an experience, an audio experience of what you want. And madVR on the flip side of that does it for the video. So those are that's the rack in and of itself. There's some other stuff that we won't go into that just kind of makes the theater function. There's 5,000 feet, roughly a mile of 12.4 speaker cable. There are 19 electrical circuits. 12 of those are 20 amps. Then you've got 6 of those being 15 amp and then 130 amp in the room itself for the projector. So all the power, every amp gets its own 20 amp circuit, making sure that everything's not running out of headroom. So we're delivering as much as possible. The theater in and of itself runs on its own 100 amp sub panel. And I heard a while ago that you just want to make sure that your amps have the power they need. Underfeeding them can actually lead to problems, distortion, and potentially damage. So do I need it? Probably not, but that's the route we take. I've never blown a breaker, even when we've hit 140 plus in that room of undistorted sound. So it seems to be working out. But that is the rack, and it's doing a great job so far.